Bill Merchant, historian and curator here at the D&H Canal Historical Society. Our museum here at 23 Mohunk Road in High Falls will be closed in 2 years, so we've created the virtual museum, short 3 to 7 minute segments that will tour you through this museum while we still can. I hope you enjoy. In today's episode of the virtual tour of the current D&H Canal Museum here in High Falls, New York, this will be part one of videos about life on the canal. What was it like to live on a canal boat on the D&H Canal? You actually did live on your boat, and this is a mock-up of what it might have looked like. Here are some of the boats. Very interestingly, it was largely families that operated these boats after, certainly after the Civil War. We have a lot of pictures like this with the kids there at the mule and presumably dad there on the side and mom at the tiller. Yeah, that was quite the brood there. They got 3, maybe 4 kids on this one, huh? Here we got another great picture of a boat. That's in Creek Locks outside of Rosendale, between here in High Falls and Rondout. Let's get back to this part of things. This is an imagining of what the living quarters on a canal boat would be like. So you lived on your boat. Navigation was from April until December, and you lived on your boat all that time, and you'd sleep on these rude beds with these, well, you can't quite see the mattresses, straw-filled mattresses very often, nice wool blankets. You can get cold on the canal at night. So you would sleep there. Here's an interesting item, giant teapot. Everybody always likes to make jokes about these things, right? Most of you folks must know that's a chamber pot. In lieu of toilet, hey? And where do you suppose they would empty the chamber pot? Into the canal. There weren't a lot of laws regulating what was what. Although I can say for a fact the D&H Canal Company would fine you $10 if they caught you dumping an animal corpse, probably any corpse, I suppose, an animal corpse into the canal. And the interesting thing, too, the $10, 5 went to the person who snitched on you. And I would like to imagine there's a career, you could be a carcass snitch on the D&H Canal. My memoirs years later. I think this is amazing. I'm an antique dealer part-time and love material culture from the past. This is a wonderful tin bath, sort of like a sponge bath tub. Amazing. Little rude table that could be put out of the way on top of a barrel and a chair of the era there. Chairs fascinate me. There are so many different chairs from the 19th century. The first furniture item to be mass-produced in about the 1830s, 1840, chairs. And there's a gun. Look at that. That's a flintlock rifle that would have been typical in the early part of the canal era, before 1850. You would have a gun. You might hunt for your supper along the canal in the wooded sections, which there were many of them along the canal's route. Very often, of course, they also hunted from the local farmers' chicken coops. That's frowned upon, but it did happen, people being people. So there's a rifle there. The canal company also had watchmen that they gave a home, and they'd have a house on the towpath side. There'll be a Where Is Our Historian at the site of a watchman's house down in Accord at some point. Look for it on our YouTube channel. But the watchman's job was to walk along the canal, look for minor leaks, and we know from letters of the chief engineer, they could tell if it was leaking because the vegetation, the weeds would grow better there. You saw a nice green spot, you knew you might have a problem. Burrowing animals were a problem, though, and the watchman had a gun because he would shoot those animals. I'm told the eels were also a problem. Watchman wasn't going to be able to shoot those, was he? And then the watchman would use the telegraph after 1848, 1849 to telegraph to the offices to get a repair boat to come. And the repair boat would be a steam launch powered by naphtha very often. What we call a naphtha launch then. They were the only persons allowed to run a steamboat was the canal company itself. You couldn't go faster than 3 miles per hour. You might erode the bed. And here's a little stove. That looks too tiny for to be used for wood. And certainly if you did use it for wood. So this really looks like a coal stove. I don't know that the provenance is that this was from an actual canal boat. We're told the canalers were not allowed to burn the coal, but I have a feeling that wasn't well enforced. And interestingly enough, the canal company, they knew the way to your boat at the beginning of the season, the tear, as they call it. And they had the waylock in Eddyville at the end of navigation. Lord, hard to say what might go on that 108-mile trip from Honesdale. If you did burn D&H coal or sell it along the way, or whatever, they weren't going to credit you with that coal, were they? So there you go. We may never know how much coal they actually burned in their boats, but there's even a coal shuttle and a shovel right there. This wonderful item right here is a sink from one of the final year canal boats. This is actually on one of the boats. I'm told that there were a good number of abandoned D&H canal barges in the middle of the 20th century that were eventually burned by the Army Corps of Engineers as a hazard of navigation. What a shame. It would be nice to have a canal boat, but being 90 foot long and 14 and a half foot wide, where would you put it? There are some great replica canal boats. The Champlain, Lake Champlain had these boats. The Lois McClure is a replica of a known Champlain Erie barge that was on the Erie, but it sailed on Lake Champlain. It visited the Maritime Museum in Kingston a couple seasons back. I, of course, was there. Had to get a chance to get on a canal boat. I'm there. I'm all over that. So we have another couple items here. Here's a great item right here. There's a lot I can talk about on this item. This is a mule anchor. Mule anchor, you say? I wouldn't know about these things, but somebody posted a picture of one on our Facebook page. Mules were so stubborn that it didn't take much weight to keep a mule in place. How do I know it's not a boat anchor? Well, you weren't supposed to use anchors. In fact, in some sections of the canal, they had to line it with clay, what they called puddling, and you could get fined if you poked a hole in that puddling. This also came from Lock 13, which was just across the Rondout Creek from High Falls in a very unsettled area. These were the N-word locks, people. I think you know what I'm trying to say. The N-word, yeah. Not an acceptable thing these days. My surmise is that those locks being on the other side, the less settled side of town, they were manned by people of color, and they got that unfortunate name because of that. Let's look at one more item before we end part one here. This is a beautiful H. Weston salt glazed pot or pottery. Salt glazed pottery was common. It was used all the time. This is how you move stuff. There were jugs for your whiskey and your cider and the like. This pot could have been used for pickles. Could have been used for, well, once you owned it, it could be used for anything. Called salt glazed because they actually used salt in the burning process to give it that surface that so many of us have seen. There you can see this is a 3-gallon pot. Wonderful decoration, makes that more valuable, although the chips, of course, take away from its value. Interesting thing about H. Weston, he was in Honesdale, PA in the latter period, but they actually started out with a pottery in Ellenville. And at some point, for reasons I personally don't currently know, moved from Ellenville to Honesdale. But you got to know, the only reason they would do that was because they had the canal as a means to transport their wares. Possibly, too, the clay. We've recently discovered that the Ellenville Glassworks, actually, they brought glass in from New Jersey. So the canal, things didn't have to necessarily be local. I don't know where the clay came from these pots, and it's possible that the canal actually moved them, and certainly the canal moved the pots. So this is now a nice spot to end part one of Life on the Canal. Thank you so much for joining us in our virtual tour. New episodes will be put up every week. Hope you enjoy.